Welcome to Story Time with the Legends of Wood TV. We're joined by some of our longtime colleagues and others who you've watched for decades and some you haven't seen for a while.
In total, we have more than 250 years of experience at Wood TV in our studio right now. So let's introduce our legends.
Matt Mclogan was a political reporter, an assignment editor, and news director during his tenure from 1972 to 1981.
Andy Rent was here from 1969 to 1978. If you were around then, you'll remember him as Captain Woody on his afternoon children's program. Today, Andy remains on the radio at 100.5 The River. This year is his 50th year of broadcasting in West Michigan.
Jane Brierly was here from 1976 to 1981. She was a pioneer, one of the early female news anchors, one of the first in West Michigan. She anchored the noon, the 6, and the 11 newscasts and produced during her tenure at Wood TV.
Jennifer Moss had 2 stints here at Wood TV as an anchor. She was here from 1987 to 1995 and again from 2002 to 2009.
Buck Matthews was hired in 1961. During his more than 2 decades on the air here, he did the weather and hosted the popular Buck Matthews Show.
Henry Erb is in his 49th year at Wood TV. He helped invent investigative reporting. All these years later, it's still usually bad news if he's knocking on your door.
Storm Team 8 Chief Meteorologist Bill Steffen has 45 years of experience in West Michigan forecasting the weather. He's been here at Wood TV since 2001.
Sports Director Jack Doles has been here since 1990. He will be inducted into the Grand Rapids Sports Hall of Fame next month, and next year he will cover his 11th Olympic Games.
Craig James was the first meteorologist on television in Grand Rapids when he arrived in 1973, and he worked here at Wood TV from 1985 to 2008.
And finally, Tom Van Houw, anchor here at Wood TV from 1986 to 2006.
Welcome all. Look at this. This is Wood TV8's fall lineup for 2019.
Welcome, everyone. A lot has changed, that's for sure.
It has.
Yeah.
But look at this. Nobody really looks that different.
Nope, not a bit.
It's just older.
I think that might be the power of studio makeup.
Well, Craig, you look a lot like Ivanhoe.
You guys kind of look like twins, actually.
Oh,
goatee. Is that what we're supposed to do when we retire?
It is
Everybody
so
who retires grows hair in their face, I swear.
Some of us do it before we retire.
You're the only one who can get away with it.
It is so good to have all of you with us. I know the technology has changed so much through the years. Matt, one of the first live shots?
The first
Live shot.
And you blew that, right?
You'd remember. It was, the live truck with the golden rods coming out of the top and so on. We pioneered that here, and I was assigned the first story on the first day that we were trying this. Everybody on the truck was new. I had not done that kind of a live shot before. And there, Henry will remember this, the city garbage workers had a work stoppage. And the staging area, if you wanted to bring your own garbage to be transferred, you had to take it to Garfield Park. And the garbage trucks were all lined up. If we were smell-o-vision instead of television, you would have known how much that smelled during the live shot. I worked hard not to gag, and when it was all over, I sneezed a lot.
Yeah, what a milestone.
But it was great, and it worked.
Good.
We tested it out and it worked.
Andy Rent, 50 years in the business here in West Michigan. Where is that puppet?
Sidney Steam Whistle was his name. And actually, I don't know. I know Dick Chilstrom was our puppeteer, and he was a master puppeteer too. He brought it to life. And it was a big puppet that wore on your arm. And he's since passed away, and one of his family members has it, but I wish we could find it. Sidney is something special.
I think that's a better answer than you having it in the trunk of your car or something like that at this point.
I only wish I had it in the trunk of my car, but not anymore. Yeah.
Jane, how women have evolved in this industry. One of the first female anchors in West Michigan. Tell us about your experience and what you've seen through the years as women have evolved in this, in TV news and broadcasting in general that you've seen in West Michigan?
You know, excuse me, I didn't think of myself as a woman. I thought of myself as a reporter. I had done radio news before I came here. So I was fairly terrified on that first day that I had to do the anchoring. Kurt Fonger was in the seat next to me, and he said, let's do a mic check. Are they off? Jane, do a primal scream. Which I did, and it really helped. So I think if we approached it just that it was a job that needed to be done, it didn't matter who did it, you just needed to do it well.
All those pictures along that huge wall and all of those memories, it's amazing to listen to a lot of you talk about the pictures and what it was like at the time. And what is it like when you see some of those pictures, Henry, in the investigative world and all of the people that you've worked with?
Well, it brings back so many memories of so many good people that we've worked with here, you know. And also looking at those folks makes me think about how this station has always cared about journalism. It's always cared about excellent reporting. And a lot of those people in those pictures have gone on to network news, they've gone into newspapering. Some of them have come out of newspapering, like Van Howe here, for example. A lot of people don't know, but he worked with Miami Herald for a while. And so we've always been a television station which cared about the craft of journalism.
That was definitely one of the impressions I had when I first walked through the doors here back in the mid-90s. Just the legacy of the news operation that was known not only in Michigan, but people around the country was, oh, you work at Wood TV. And just to see Tom come in and sully all of this with sandals on his feet today, what happened to you, man?
He was wearing these when he worked here.
He hasn't changed a bit.
Oh, come now.
You were probably in your best element at that Live at 5 show when you guys were live remote.
You know what? That
far
was a
flung.
great thing to be doing. But if you think about going out every day with 2 shooters and creating a half-hour show from nothing, I had nightmares about it. And my biggest recurring nightmare was I came out of the van where we edited on location, and I came out of the van looking for everybody to be in place. And there was George Marcheski, there was Kenny Jones, and I said, where are the cameras? And they said, you didn't tell us we had to have cameras. and then I'd wake up in a sweat. And we did that show with a lot of pride. We really did. We created a lot of nothing. I mean, a lot of something out of very little every day. We created a lot of nothing. That's like something I might have said then.
Yeah, right. Only the consultants were saying that.
Right.
Yeah, and it all looked so smooth and as if it had been rehearsed many times. But it was just so free-flowing, and you guys looked like you were having a great time.
Well, but isn't it the way TV is anyway?
Yeah.
The anchors look relaxed, and the live shot guy is relaxed, and everybody's doing what they do well, and it just looks so easy. And meanwhile, back in the control room, people are yelling and swearing at each other, and
Smoke is coming out of it.
No one knows.
right? No, they don't know.
But I don't think there are a lot of people that could have pulled that show off the way you did.
Well,
It was interesting. It was
thank
fun.
you, Jack. That's very kind of you to say.
A lot of fun to watch for sure.
Can I tell a story about Tom Van Howell on Live at 5? You may want to edit. You may want to edit this out. I don't know. I remember when Tom interviewed his wife because she was head of the Holland Tulip Parade at the festival, and he said at the end of the show, I'm going to ask this woman if I can get her to go home with me. And the phone started to ring off the wall.
Has he lost his mind? Actually, it was a little more direct than that. I said, if she plays her cards right, I'm going to sleep with her.
That's right, yes. He said that on the air.
Oh, the 90s.
No, the-
And Craig, you've been active still in forecasting and whatnot. Bring us up to speed. What you been up to?
A lot of goofing off. We still host some tours. I used to do a lot of rating of golf courses. The only forecasting I do is for me at home now. It is amazing.
No critiquing of the meteorologist.
Oh no, I never email them and say, what are you doing? I can get at home as much as I could in the weather office now, off the computer. So it's great. When we first started, I remember we hired Bill in '74. We had an old aircraft radar. If you remember, you can see the sweep go around, and you couldn't loop anything. We had to put an overlay over top of that scope so you could see what you were referring to. And now look at the radar and satellite loops. They're amazing the difference that's taking place.
Certainly, yeah. When it comes to life-saving technology,
Yeah.
the weather is advanced probably
it's
the
amazing.
most, has been the most impactful.
Those old weather shows were really boring.
Technology for sure. And Bill, you can speak
And
to
we
that
had
as
a
well.
lot of time to fill. I had the
Yeah.
entire 5 minutes at 7:25 and 8:25 with the state map, the national map, and a box of magic markers. And how do you fill 5 minutes worth of time and make it interesting for people? We did a cities roll. I used to write little poems on the bottom.
But was that over at 13 though, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't here
Yeah.
at Channel 8. We don't do poems.
Well, nobody does poems anymore.
Buck, I know when we were looking at some of these pictures, the memories that must just flood back. Tell us a little bit about what you're experiencing when you walk through the new studio.
Well, first of all, sitting next to these two guys makes me feel like I ought to be in the parking lot. Because I can tell you that when I was still on the air doing weather here, and these two were still on the air at Channel 13, 13 was running a promo, the tagline of which was 3 media, and who was your third guy?
Well, we had Ted Grebus for a
George
while,
Lessons.
and then George Lessons came in 1980.
Anyway, 3 meteorologists are better than none. I was the none they were talking about.
That didn't come from us.
And I can't tell you how it hurts me today to sit next to you guys.
Tell everybody the schedule you had for a while, because I think that's really impressive.
Well, yeah, I actually, my work day from beginning to end, and I wasn't on the air all this time, but from the time I went on the air first in the morning until the time when I signed off the 11 was 17 and a half hours.
And
And
that's
I did
something.
that for a number of years.
Yeah.
And Thelma thought I was having an affair.
But you did the cut-ins in the morning. You did
Yeah,
your
did
main
both.
show, your
Did-
half-hour show, 9 to 9.
Did radio, television, my show, noon 11, noon 6 and 11. But after a while, they took pity on me, and they didn't you do 6 for a while?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I did the weather on weekends, and then if you were
Yes,
gone,
and I
did
should
6
also
and
tell
11.
you about Rent, because I would occasionally look over in the wings, and he would be sticking a pin in a voodoo doll, waiting for me to die so he could get my job.
And you never did.
And it never worked. did it?
What's up with that?
And now I'm doing it for you because I want to have your job.
Buck, you should fess up now on television and talk about how you used the yellow and the black markers to fool people, that you actually knew what you were going to invent.
Yeah, obviously. I would go on the air and I wouldn't know what I was talking about, but I would come into the studio early, and on the yellow maps, we had 3 maps on a rotating table, and I would mark the lows, highs, fronts, and so forth, and precipitation on the map with a yellow grease pencil. And then when I came on the air, I would talk about it, and I had a black marker, and I would just go over those. And there was one day when something interfered, and I didn't get into the studio in time, and we went on the air, and I turned around and suddenly realized that the map of the United States was as bare as a baby's bottom. I had put no marks on it, and so I just made it up. Things happened that day that never happened.
I've never admitted this to you all. I did the weather in Traverse City before I came here, and I knew less than nothing. So I went to the bookstore and bought that Dell pocketbook of weather. And I did the same thing with pencil. I would draw it on, and I would write what a low pressure area was, and I'd get real close and read, oh yeah, you know, where the winds are going in. So then I had to start going to the drive-throughs at the restaurants, you know, at McDonald's, etc., because people would stop and ask me, and I hadn't a clue. Yeah.
What's the question that was most asked you two guys in your career?
That's a good
I'm
question.
surprised it didn't just come out.
I think.
Did you order this weather?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hundreds
Yeah,
of
I
times.
would-
No, we'd say Buck did.
Yeah. I blame Channel 3.
Thanks very much.
I could attest riding in a parade with Bill Steffen on a sunny day. No one knows you're there.
No, no. Everybody wants to talk to Bill, that's for sure. Jen, 2 times at Wood TV8 and super busy still. Tell us what's going on with you.
Well, right now I am still on radio now at WGVU Public Media, working there 88.5 doing that. But you know, just looking back at the time, we had so much fun. You know, Henry talked about us wanting to do good journalism, and that was at the core. And we always pushed each other, I think, to excel and to do better and do better. We used to compete for the lead story at 6. I knew it my first tour. A couple of folks that were here, Ernie Reno and some others, some of you may remember him as well. But we would, you know, you wanted to aspire to do the best that you could do. Following and looking at Tom Van Houw, when I first got here, I was like, it was 1987-ish or so. Just the journalistic quality. I knew he was a good journalist, and all of us would look and say, well, how is Tom going to write that or do that? I mean, we were learning, because I just come in from Lansing. A lot of us came from Lansing, you know, coming from the 100th market to the 30th something. You really wanted to succeed and excel when you got here, because this was like a primo market, and we really wanted to do good. We saw folks like Henry Earp, you know. These were people we were admired and wanted to aspire to do the same thing. So we had a lot of fun. It was a lot of family time. I mean, this was like a family.
It was intense.
It was.
There's an intense pressure that comes along with this job, but you blow off steam with your colleagues sometimes in those moments, on air, off air, in between commercial breaks. And I know that Tom and Sue and Craig and Jack, when you guys were running the show, you guys were jousting a little bit there on the air, maybe to the point where it seemed like maybe it wasn't friendly.
Oh, it was friendly.
Oh, it's friendly.
It really was.
Tom stirring the pot.
There was that. There was that.
He wanted to keep you on your toes and make sure you weren't, you know, feeding him some nonsense.
Yeah. Well, we were talking, and Jennifer and I were sitting in this corner here on a couch, and I have no idea what prompted me to do it.
We were doing the noon show, right?
We're doing, it was the 5 o'clock or the 5:30, okay, whatever. And I said, Jennifer, get your hand off my leg.
And of course, my reaction is, Tom.
And she said, my hand is not on your leg.
Trust and believe. But I said, Tom, I'm not touching you. But that's the kind of thing always with him. Yeah. It's like he gets you laughing. He's the one that could start it. And you know, you're on air, and then you start the laughter, and you're like, and you're the one busted. He's still sitting there going like this.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what's going on.
He liked to provoke. I remember a live shot I was doing very first year here. Something was happening with a train track, and the alarm wasn't going off at the tracks. Throw it back to Tom, and he says, Brian, that's a hell of a way to run the railroad.
I don't remember that. I don't
Yes,
remember
sir.
That. I don't think so.
He said, I don't think so.
Jack, 11th Olympics coming up.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is amazing.
Yeah, Tokyo. I've never been to Japan, so that's part of the great thing is you get to know these athletes as they're getting ready and preparing for their journey. Part of it is you get to be there with them. You know, still one of my favorite memories was in Sydney, and we had Martin Bones there, who was a judo athlete from Kalamazoo. And all these years he put into it. And he got out there, he tried to move, he got put on his back, 30 seconds, that's it. So now he had to wait and see if the guy that beat him advanced to a certain level, and if he did, then he'd get back in the tournament. Well, that guy lost in that one round where if he would have won, Martin's back in. So that was it, 30 seconds. So I met him outside of the Sydney Bridge. That was our backdrop for the interview, this is Sydney Bridge. And you can tell he was just really down and distraught. And before we started the interview, I said, you know what, turn around, look. And on the Sydney Bridge, you had the Olympic rings, massive Olympic rings burned up there. And it was just the most beautiful sight. And he turned around and, you know, then it just kind of hit him. Yeah, I lost, but I'm here. I got to compete. I'm part of this incredible thing. And just had a great chat after that.
That's a great example of why you are who you are.
Well, 4 years later, he was in Beijing. And I was there, Matt's side, and he won that match. And when he came off I don't get a lot of hugs from athletes, but I think he decided to keep going. And then after that, and he won that match, it was just kind of like, all right, I get more than 30 seconds this time. And so those kind of moments and those connections with the athletes, those are priceless.
Jack, have you ever not been able to find fast food in the Olympic venues? Because I went to China with you, and I couldn't believe you found Kentucky Fried Chicken and Domino's Pizza.
Yeah, it depends on who's catering for NBC. The better the caterer, the less fast food I need. But occasionally, you just want a little bit at home. The worst, though, was in Seoul in 1988, and we went to a Pizza Hut, and I ordered a sausage pizza, and it was hot dogs cut up.
Sure.
Oscar Mayer wieners. It was like,
Sounds
are
like a
you
dad lunch.
kidding me?
Well, we're looking forward to all the reports that come out of that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating every time you go, for sure.
I want to bring about social media. You know, it's such a big part of our lives here in the news gathering process these days. And, you know, I look over at Buck, and he runs a good social, at 90 years old, he's got a better social media game on Facebook than I think I do. You seem to embrace it. I wondered, like, for those out of the business or still in, dealing with it, good, bad, indifferent, how do you feel about it?
I can answer one part of that. The only reason I'm on Facebook is because when I wrote my book, somebody said, you're never going to sell your book if you don't go on Facebook. And I didn't want to be on Facebook. People say, I want to be your friend on Facebook. I said, we're friends. I don't need to do that. So I said, okay, I've been on Facebook now for 3 years. I haven't sold a single book through Facebook.
But how many friends do you have?
Well, I've got more enemies than friends. I think I'm in a couple of very colorful discussions with some people who are politically opposed to what I think. So, and that's fun.
Tom, I think you would have been consumed by Twitter, or it would have consumed you.
The first time I heard anybody mention Twitter was Pete Hooksford. We had a function here, a live a debate or something, and he was talking about tweeting. And I had never heard of it, and I have never tweeted, ever. And I don't get it. Is that crazy to say that?
If you're not into it, I'd stay away from it. But, and if you're in this business, though, you
have to.
Yeah, you've got to.
You sure do now, that's for sure.
And what do you have to do? What is it about tweeting that you have to be a part of?
Well, it's a great way to bring people back, I think, to the mothership of the station here so that they can watch the content that you're putting out.
Right, and it's just the multi-platforms. You're getting that information out at all different levels and bringing them back to watch the newscasts.
I mean, where did they go?
They're busy. They're all over the place, just like you guys.
It essentially makes everybody a reporter because they're reporting what's going on in their own lives. They're reporting what they're having for dinner with the pictures and all that. I got into Facebook because of my kids. I had 3 kids in their 20s, and they came in, Dad, Facebook, cool. Get on it.
You know, it's one of the things that has helped speed up everything in our society, and including news gathering and dissemination, right? I mean, when I first came to work here, we had film. We didn't have even videotape. You know, and it would take hours to develop that film and get it edited and get it on television. And now it's pretty much instant with, you know, your cell phone. You can put it in social media as well, and everything has sped up. That is good and it's bad. It gets the story out to people quicker, but it gives us less time to actually spend reporting on that story, trying to find out information.
And weather, it has been amazing. I mean, we now get almost instant pictures of damage or storms or really neat images of clouds, or we saw a wonderful image of what are called sprites today, which I'm not going to get into, that are just fantastic that you never get to see, and you get to see them on Twitter, and that's the good part of it. The bad part of it is a lot of people are really bad.
There's a lot of misinformation. You really have to be careful what you see and retweet and all of that. But last night we had a funnel cloud over by Portland.
Right. That's cool.
First indication of anything was somebody sent a picture. And it's a little tiny rope thing, narrower than this room, so it's not going to show up on a radar.
But the viewers are out there, and they're looking out for you, too, and we've
it's
got a lot of spotters out there.
Yeah, it's exactly true. Some things in our business change, some don't. We still have those number 2 Ticonderoga pencils that have been the same for 100 years. Yet on the other hand, when I first started, everybody wanted an autograph. I haven't asked for an autograph now in a year. It's everybody wants selfies. Yeah. So we've gone from autographs to selfies.
They still ask me and Bach.
You gave them a number 2 Ticonderoga pencil.
They just want to see if we can write.
You know what's really interesting is watching the meteorologists talk about weather and the passion that you have still about weather. Your conversation is constantly, the only weatherman I know who gets excited about a Sprite. But when you talk about all the things about weather, you're excited now about watching a funnel cloud. I'd be diving for the sofa immediately.
One of my first assignments, and we had an hour block at 6, there had been a tornado sighted, and they sent me out with Tom Lennon and Larry Robinson, and they said, go find it and try to get back before the end of the newscast. I was terrified. I truly had been here like a month, and I thought, what have I got myself into? And Robinson, who was a big kidder, Said, now Jane, if we find it, get into the ditch. Just get into the ditch. I said, okay, I'll ditch
Right.
it. Yeah.
Outstanding in my field.
Exactly, yeah, truly.
And Matt, you wore so many hats here. You were in the political reporter, even news director. What was easier, news director or political reporting?
Well, interesting question, because the political dynamic here changed so much when our local congressman, Jerry Ford, became vice president, and then, of course, president. And so political reporting from 73 through about 76, 77 was the best gig imaginable.
This was it.
And you know, I was a 24-year-old kid, and all of a sudden the congressman is picked by Nixon to replace Agnew. We all remember the story. And Grand Rapids became the center of the universe, and I had much more senior colleagues in the newsroom, I'm looking at one of them right now, who had regretted not picking up the political beat when it became vacant the year I arrived. But it was an honor to be in the management of this station for the newsroom because, and Henry mentioned this, because Time Magazine, which owned the station at the time, was deeply committed to journalism. And so we felt that we were part of an enterprise that was worthy and necessary and a great public service, and endeavored every day to do it well.
When you have severe weather, does the newsroom still get phone calls from angry people?
Oh, sure. I had a call once from a guy. We had All-Star Poker on. Okay? I mean, this is the slowest show on television. And some guy calls me up. He's all upset we busted into poker. I said, I was only on for a minute. The guy's still playing with his chips. He didn't even bet.
No, I was just going to say, not trying to date myself, but do you guys remember when we talk about technology, triplicate, or what was it, script copy on
Absolutely,
typewriters
yes.
with the hard,
Absolutely.
plunking typewriters?
Sure.
Now it's so easy. It's just
That
so
and,
different and time-consuming back then, because you had to really
and ripping the scripts.
and ripping the scripts.
We had 5-ply scripts, and we had to
Tape
give out
them
all
together
of the
for the
copies
prompter
instead of
and,
just
oh my
We
goodness.
went through a lot of trees.
did.
A lot of that paper. And Jennifer and I, we worked on the Daybreak
Show, absolutely.
And I remember we were up at whatever that was, 3:30 in the morning.
3:30, yes.
And we're on at 5, and we'd look at each other and say, who is watching?
Who's watching? And remember, we called the first hour. I was like, oh, that's the practice hour, because that's when anything could happen. And we're like, okay, no one saw that. Now 6 o'clock, we have to
This is
really
the
be
practice
ready.
half
This is
hour,
the
yes.
practice hour. Now we're really.
But that's not the case anymore because now people are tuning in.
up.
It keeps growing.
4:30, yes,
Yeah.
and they're looking.
When I first started at the others, 13 in town, there was so little for us to do, they said, only a 6 and an 11, that I had to be a booth announcer. You know, the guy who says, you're watching
Where are your
whatever.
children?
Yeah, and I did so bad at that they only had me do the 6 and 11 then, because one of the first weeks I was in town, totally new to the area, they had me cold copy, read the word Jurgens and Holtfluer. I butchered that so bad, I never had to do it again, which was great.
Was that deliberate?
If you moved to West Michigan, you had to learn Dutch really
I don't
fast.
learn the Dutch words.
Yeah, really fast. My first words in town, I think I told you this story, when I first showed up for the job, and I said, what am I to be doing? He said, well, just get the lay of the land, but you have to do booth breaks, and that's when you had a live announcer. And so I sat in there, and the director pointed to me, and I read the copy, and it said, Colorful Wood TV, Grand Rapids. And you had to remind people that they're watching it in color because there was still so much black and white TV. So you had to remind them, you're in color.
Can we get that one more time? Sir, listen to that. Listen to these tones.
Colorful Wood TV, Grand Rapids.
I know Investigative is a huge part of Wood TV, and Henry, through the years, I mean, you have contributed so much and done an incredible job for the residents of Michigan, West Michigan. And tell us a little bit about what it's like, the evolution of investigative reporting and all the years that you've spent in West Michigan.
Well, it's something I always wanted to do, and when I first got here, I actually came here to write documentaries, which we did, and we did some pretty good work for a short period of time, and then the economy went bad in 1970, 71, and we stopped doing that at the time being. But I always wanted to do long-form stories, and so I would find wrestle time, scrounge time from daily reporting to do stuff like that. And eventually, in like the mid-90s, investigative reporting here became a thing. we actually had a designated group of people doing that, and that really started opening us up once again to doing that kind of long form, in-depth kind of work. You know, we'd do it before that, but it was harder to do because we didn't have the time. The reporters were on the street most of the time. We managed to get, well, you know, a day here, a few hours there, that we didn't have to do daily reporting to try to put something together and work it out. But it really helped to have a dedicated group of people to do it with some actual help, a producer and investigator.
Most tense exchange, Henry. Anything stick in your mind as far as your encounters out in the field?
Oh gosh, yeah, you know, it happens every now and then, but not that often as you might fear. I mean, I always worry about it to some degree. You know, I've had people. Fortunately, the camera guy is usually first, right? They come after the camera.
They make good cover.
And so I hide behind the. No, I don't. So one time I found myself propping up my cameraman because the other guy was pushing him, trying to push him over. I mean, that stuff just happens from time to time, and you know, you just kind of live with it. It doesn't happen that often.
Right.
But you do get testy exchanges. I mean, I get doors slammed in my face quite a bit, and some people just don't open the door. But I've had, you know, the other doors go wham.
Well, yeah,
So
you got that rep.
and I try to explain, I'm really a nice guy.
Well, your contributions have been significant, no doubt about that. Yeah, the investigative
Can I
through
add
the
something?
years. Sure.
I don't think there's probably in the whole country a television reporter that got into the business to do long-form investigative stuff, and he's still at it. And if I can find a reporter that's done what you've done, I'd be very surprised. I think it's really an achievement.
It's been a long ride. It's been fun too.
Yeah, it's just really something. It's great.
And I know as I'm putting a sportscast together, I'm usually kind of focused, and I'll have 2, 3, 4 TVs on. But every time I hear Henry's voice, I stop and I look up.
Exactly.
And I go, oh, this ought to be good. So,
What is about to happen? Yep.
no, it's been proud to have you working here all these years, Henry. It's represent this place great.
Absolutely. And Buck Matthews, I was curious because I always can catch a few of these episodes still on YouTube of the Buck Matthews show. You had some big name guests come in.
Well, we were lucky in that we had the only window in town. When the symphony or some other major organization had a significant guest in town, they obviously wanted to promote their event for which that person was here. And so because we had the show, we were lucky enough to have them call us up and say, would you like to have so-and-so on the air? And I would say, no, thank you. and I would fall over myself too. But I have to tell you that also as a relatively young person in the business, when someone of that stature would walk into the studio and sit down next to me on the couch, I would melt sometimes. I thought, how am I, going to carry on a conversation with this learned, famous person? And conversation was the trick. When I first started doing it, I interviewed these people. I had the questions all set, and then I had questions on cue cards, and then the engineers and the floor directors went on strike, and suddenly I didn't have cue cards. So I had to depend on myself. And so I learned then quickly that if you had one good opening question and one good closing question and let the rest of it go, they would make it go where they wanted it to go, and it became more fun than work.
Buck, who's the one person that you got to interview that you were kind of pinching yourself, like, I can't believe I get to talk to this person?
You're going to have to read the book. There is a page. There's a page with 125 names.
Go to Facebook.
Maya Angelou was one. Maya Angelou. She was on twice, and I was spellbound. And she was so forthcoming. We had children, students in the studio, and their teachers said that they could not come to the show unless they read her book first, and they could pick any one of her 5 books. And so then we had them stand up at a microphone and ask her questions based on what they had learned of her. And she was so gracious. And that one of those shows is on YouTube. It's available now, if you'd like to see it. My last show is still on YouTube.
Absolutely.
So
see how the pro does it.
Who was the singer you had on
Which
that
one?
Well, I know you had a lot, but they said she was maybe an opera singer. That she wouldn't sing. Don't ask her to sing. Don't ever even broach that subject.
Do we have time for that story?
You craftily had a baby grand in the
Patrice
studio.
Munsell was coming to town to sing with the Grand Rapids Symphony. And I was told, I always tried, if I had a performer on the show, I felt that the audience deserved to hear that person perform. But often, someone who was going to sing with a symphony at night wasn't real interested in getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning, being here for a 9 o'clock show and singing. And so I was told that Patrice Munsell was not going to sing no matter what. It turned out that we had to tape the show in the afternoon instead of doing it live at 9 in the morning. And so we sandbagged her just to see what would happen. And Mike Meyer, who was my director, the boy genius, we put I don't know where he got the Oriental rug, we put it in the middle of the studio, we put the old piano in the middle of the rug. We got Homer Jackson, who was the keyboardist at Mayflower Church and also played at Safey's at night. We had him in here in a tux, sitting at the piano, and when Miss Munsell and I,
This is the soft sell.
when Miss Munsell and I walked into the studio, he was just playing quietly, and we sat on a couple of stools next to the piano and had a nice conversation about her career and about the concert that night. And I said, oh, and by the way, there's a song that you sang from The Merry Widow, which breaks my heart every time I hear it. I have that recording. I play it over and over. And it is Vilja, and I just love it. Whereupon Homer Jackson just sort of goes into the intro, and thereupon Patrice Munsell sang the whole thing.
Wow.
And her manager was standing in the corner, and I thought he was going to have a stroke, but she sang it. Show business was my life.
When you all were shutting down Channel 13, Buck and Warren Reynolds and who else was with
Bill
us?
Allen?
Nope. You, Warren, me, and
Dave Bolton?
Dave Bolton. We would shut down the newsroom, and Warren Reynolds, talk about technology, bought a VCR, and we thought that was magic. So we would lock everything up, sign the copies, put it away, and drive to Warren's house. And he would show what we'd missed during the evening, you know, and movies.
I was never invited.
You weren't? I thought you
Working all
weren't.
the time.
I'm so sorry. Sharon made popcorn.
Now you tell.
Yeah. Well,
That's cool.
sorry.
That's all right.
I feel bad now. Yeah.
That's all right. Warren made his mark. He hired Jack Dole.
Oh,
Right. Wow. What a wonderful man. Yeah.
yeah.
I was a guest on the Buck Matthews show one day.
Were you? Are you on that page?
I guess I'll have to buy the book. So I can't remember the year. It was sometime in the mid-'70s. Election returns were very late coming in, and we had not called every race that needed to be. There were a couple still hanging, and they were congressional seats, and it was pretty important to get it out. And rather than break into your program, which was live, I came into this room and sat down there, and then during a break, I said, Buck, would you put me on? Which meant he had to delay his actual booked guest. And you very graciously did, and you asked the right questions, and I stole 2 or 3 minutes from you, and I appreciated that, and thank you.
You threatened to have me fired. Well, that was fine. That was one of the wonderful things about doing a show like that. And in fact, I think that infused everything we did. You've talked about the family nature of what we did here. There were so many things that we could do spontaneously. We could get away with a lot. Management sometimes stood up there in the window of the client's room with their mouths agape at what we're doing down here, but we got away with a lot. But it was fun to be able to be flexible like that.
Rolling with the punches in live television, that's what makes live television
Exactly.
exciting, especially when you have a severe weather event, Craig. Obviously, and I was trying to think back, we always talk about the blizzard of '78, the DeRate show. Talk about some of those moments when we've got these big weather events coming in, and you are in the moment broadcasting and forecasting. Is that fun?
It's tense because you want to get it right and you don't know if you can trust the person calling into the information or not. I remember one day I was standing beside Susan Shaw and the person was calling in with a report of a tornado or some severe weather. And I asked him, well, where are you? Meaning, where are you located? He said, I'm on my back porch.
That's about the most West Michigan answer you're ever going to get.
I'm glad you're still there. But some of those times got long at night when you'd be babysitting thunderstorms and waiting for something to happen and nothing was happening. When they first came out with Doppler radar, they had a problem where they wanted to catch every event and they overwarned for a lot of systems. So we had to stay on the air for a Doppler indicated tornado warning when there was nothing going on. And that was a little tedious at times. But when there was something going on, it was very exciting.
Absolutely.
I always got the impression you guys really loved it when
We love severe weather, yes. We love severe weather. Good weather's boring.
It's the only time you really earn your living is during severe weather.
We don't wish ill of anybody, but on the other hand, it is exciting to us.
It is
It's what
exciting.
we grew up with. I mean, I was
Exactly.
a weather net when I was 3 years old.
And that's kind of what I was referring to when people call up and get angry. I'd be down in the newsroom, you'd break into a program
Yes.
to take over programming, basically. And people would call them and say, will you blankety people get off your high horse?
maybe
Will
you-
you please go back to the program I was watching?
A lot of
We'll make note of it. Thank you for calling.
You remember the show Friends?
Yeah.
It was so popular, and we were supposed to have severe weather that evening. Management was in a panic. Do we let you interrupt that final show or don't we?
Right.
It was a real tense situation. Fortunately, nothing happened during.
And Tom, you were talking about interacting with the viewers. I'm sure you've got some viewer feedback in your day.
Which time?
I did, and a lot of it very nice. A lot of it sort of like from people. It's like I was their friend, and they wanted to say hi. There were other people that didn't feel the same, and I still have some of those letters.
Those are the best reading.
Funny, I don't really like reading them even now.
One of our favorite viewer feedback, we dated but didn't tell anybody we were dating.
We knew.
And it was a bullpen newsroom, and for some reason, Henry and Matt shared a phone line. So I would call and say, would you like to go skiing tonight? And Henry would say, I'd love to. And I'd say, so Matt, you want to come too? Okay. So there were a lot of us, we did 3 things together, but after we married, we were driving into work together, and of course I'm putting on my makeup at the last minute at a stoplight, and someone called in and said, we just saw Miss Brierly with Mr. Mclogan applying her makeup.
No, she was applying the makeup.
And didn't you adopt Henry after you married?
And you guys thought nobody knew about this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And how many years of marriage now, all these years later?
It's a quiz, let's see if he gets it right.
42 plus.
Yep, 42.
Oh,
42 at the end of the month. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
A relationship that survived TV news.
Yes.
That's amazing, as a matter of fact.
And survived Henry Erb.
All right, Tom, second to last word.
You know, after all the years spent here and working with you guys and with Warren, God, what a man, and Jack and Susan and Brian, working together on the old 11 o'clock show, Steve Osasami.
That's right.
It's great. But more than anything, I think we bonded. It's just a bonding. We're all extremely lucky to be in a position to have done what we did. And for those of you still doing it, my hat is off to you, because I miss it. But I'm determined to say that I left it for good.
Craig,
Yes.
sum it up for us, sir.
Well, I, like Buck, had a vision ever since I was a kid. I wanted to be in broadcasting. I wanted to do TV weather ever since I was a little kid. My mother says the first word I ever spoke was the word snow. I think it was the word no, but she said it was snow. I've always wanted to do this. 40-year career went by in a minute, and we really did meet some wonderful people, a lot of them here. I do have a regret that I spent too much time in the weather office, not enough time getting to know more people. We have a Wood TV8 retirement luncheon now every other week, and I've gotten to know Buck, who's one of the best guys you'll ever want to meet in broadcasting. And there's been so many really good people I've met, more now than when I was working because I was too darn busy working. So if you're in this field, spend some time with the people you're working with.
Yeah.
and get to enjoy it. Yep.
Broadcasting can certainly be demanding, but
Yes.
like everyone has mentioned, you know, when you're in it and you're working so hard, that camaraderie and the depth of the friendships that are built are just priceless.
Well, this was awesome.
Wonderful. It
You guys are
really
fantastic.
was.
You guys are pros. You still got it.
Fantastic. It was just an honor listening to all of you and going down memory lane. It's just been fantastic, and it's been wonderful to learn from all of you and continue to learn from all of you.
And can I say thank you for inviting us back, too? It was fun.
Absolutely.
It really was.
Welcome anytime.
Certainly our pleasure.
We'll see you for the 75th.